description of Scientology in the 1984 custody trial is absolutely scathing and is worth reproducing in some detail. This is a quote. Scientology is both immoral and socially obnoxious. In my opinion, it is corrupt, sinister, and dangerous. It is corrupt because it is based on lies and deceit and has as its real objective money and power for Mr. Hubbard, his wife, and those close to him at the top. It is sinister because it indulges in infamous practices both to its adherents who do not toe the line unquestionably and to those outside who oppose or criticize it. It is dangerous because it is out to capture people, especially children and impressionable young people, and to indoctrinate and brainwash them so that they become the unquestioning captives and tools of the cult, withdrawn from ordinary thought, living, and relationships with others. When an organization calls itself a religion, they should not negate the need to critically evaluate the group before deciding if it is legitimate and beneficial. The over 900 deaths in Jonestown, Guyana show us that sinister, demented people can hide behind the cloak of religion to prey on the unsuspecting of well-meaning people. So anyway, I think that what's most amazing about Scientology is that it's considered a religion at all. It is really about having a a psychological substitute and to involve you in the organization itself, which does not, to be a religion means something that is bound together and worshiping something outside of yourself. Well, there's no worship involved in Scientology.
Do they have churches?
They do. They have, well, you see these buildings, and they call themselves the Church of Scientology. But I don't think, I'd have to double check that, if they even have worship services.
Maybe that's where they have those classes.
Well, they do have classes. Try to look at this as a...
Classes themselves are considered.
Yes, that might be. They hold them on Sundays. There was a big, beautiful Scientology building in Washington, D.C. What's the name of the hill that we stayed on? So the Hilton where Reagan was shot. It's if you're walking from the subway stop up there. And it's a big, beautiful mansion. And there were people coming and going all hours of the day, so which is good if a church does that as well. It's a good idea. What was I going to say about it? Oh, about it being a religion. I think what needs to be realized is that most countries around the world, and the big fight right now is in Germany, does not recognize Scientology as a religion. It considers them a cult. In the United States, Scientology was not recognized as a religion, as a tax-exempt religious organization, until something happened. Who can take a guess what happened? The Clinton administration. Who were the biggest supporters of the Clinton, well, not the biggest, but who were the big supporters that got Clinton elected?
Hollywood.
Hollywood. And who's involved in Hollywood?
Scientology.
Scientology is very deeply entrenched in Scientology. John Travolta, Tom Cruise, just to name a couple. The reports of how Katie Holmes was handled after her engagement to Tom Cruise and her being separated from her family and from her Roman Catholic faith is scary. The fact that she had to have somebody around her all the time, you know, from the church, in the form, I think, of Tom's sister, but it was always somebody around. She was never by herself. They have all these weird rituals for birth, that birth has to be done in complete silence. You have to come into the world in complete silence so that it's peaceful. I like the idea of a peaceful birth, but that's a bit much. There is now, I think, though, with the rise of the internet, there's a lot more information out there. There are a lot of ex-scientists now, Scientologists, who are speaking out about their, and does anybody see the campaign that was out by Anonymous? Did you see that? Anybody else? There's a campaign, a YouTube campaign out by a group called Anonymous. And if you type in YouTube Scientology and Anonymous, they have these kind of really scary videos with a computer-generated voice talking about Scientology and how they're have to be eliminated and eradicated, and people have had protests. They've gone to the Scientology building in masks and protested and things like that. So it's certainly a very people are beginning to speak out publicly, less fearful of retribution if you do so in large numbers. So anyway, so it's really not a religion. if anything, it's about, and I actually I had one run-in with a Scientology when I was a Scientologist. I was in seminary. I was visiting Jennifer in Boston, my wife now. At that time, I think she was my fiance, she was my girlfriend at the time. I was staying with friends in Boston and visiting her, and we went out to dinner with some of her friends, and the waiter was a Scientologist, and I don't know how we got on the topic of religion. I wasn't in a collar. That usually is how most people want to talk about religion with me, but we got talking about, and the waiter mentioned I'm a Scientologist. Maybe we were talking at the table about faith, and so he decided to talk about Scientology. And ultimately, in coming back and forth with him in a couple of minutes of discussion about it, I asked him, who do you worship? And he looked at me blankly, and I said, well, if you're not worshiping God, you're worshiping yourself. And that's the original sin. I want to be like God on my terms.
Right.
So, I don't know, hopefully the Holy Spirit moved him in that, but we'll have to see.
I'm sorry, you go ahead.
Once you get in and you decide to leave, will they allow you to leave peacefully?
Oh, I think it depends on, one of the ways that they get you in is that you owe money. And they'll get people who want to become deeper into the clear, they will allow them to work for the organization to pay off their debt. And so I think they will certainly expect you to pay. If you are leaving at an upper level, they will expect you to pay them back the money that you owe for all these classes, and a lot of people are in very deep. And I guess it depends on how involved you are in the organization. You know, if you're somebody who's an operating official or what operating phaeton of some notoriety, I think that there would certainly be a smear campaign that would accompany it. I think most people, once you stop paying at the lower levels, they probably are just as happy to let you walk away if you don't pay.
As long as you don't speak out.
Right, as long as you don't speak out.
A question, it wouldn't involve a clear, of course, because their health is absolutely perfect. But if you're not a clear or a phaeton, then are you allowed to take, drugs, to say, an antibiotic?
I think so.
That sort of thing.
I do think.
Just not
I know,
something that would help with
I know there
mental.
was tragically in the news lately, John Travolta's son,
Yes.
who died and apparently had a seizure disorder. And
Yes.
and the story to talk about that he was on some medications, but not on others. And I don't know why. Maybe just a personal family decision. It had nothing to do with Scientology, but I do think that Scientologists, if they get an infection, would
Okay.
take. Not like more extreme Christian scientists who believes the body's not real and wouldn't do that, or Jehovah's Witness who won't have a blood transfusion because of theological reasons. Really, the big attacking point in Scientology is psychiatry. And it may be that human beings are over-medicated. That might be true. There may be a lot of children running around who've been misdiagnosed with ADHD and should be on medication, but there are people who should be. And there are people who have manic depressive orders for which a prescription helps to normalize the chemical balance in their brain. So there is a reality that those things are true. But I think for them to have a blanket discrediting of all psychiatry because of that, I think is really quite dangerous. And they are, I think one of the judges, and they have a real campaign against the German government because they won't recognize them as a religion, and for tax-exempt purposes and for just all the sort of benefits that a religion has. And they've talked about, that Germany, the current German regime is like the Nazis because they treat them the way they're treated. So.
That's why Tom Cruise made the stuff there.
Ooh!
The film against Germany, Stoltenberg attempted to assassinate.
That's true.
Well, I don't know if that's true, but he has also made some truths leader. Anyway, so there it is. Time for real religion.
Thank you.
Daughters of the King institution today. We had this morning, the 8 o'clock service, we had the InterVarsity Fellowship from the University of Michigan. Is spending the week here doing some social service projects in the area, and came to the 8 o'clock service this morning, and they're going to another church for the 10 o'clock. So it's nice to see a group of young people excited for the Lord in college, doing that, giving up their winter break. So, all right.